My name is Tori Ingram. I was 32 years old when my family found out the truth about where I had been for the past 2 years. I remember standing in my mother's backyard, surrounded by 60 people I had not seen since I was 26. White tablecloths, string lights, a banner that read, "Happy 25 years." My mother's anniversary party, the one I was never invited to. Her phone started ringing before I even reached the dessert table. Then it rang again. And again. 3 straight days, it did not stop. See, for 2 years, my mother told every single person in our family that I was locked in a rehabilitation facility. Aunts mailed letters of sympathy, cousins whispered behind closed doors, neighbors brought casseroles to my mother's porch like somebody had died. But here is what none of them knew. I had never touched drugs in my life, and in 48 hours, every single person at this table was going to find out exactly what I had been doing instead. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is the channel where ordinary people share extraordinary moments of truth, the kind that change everything. If this is your first time here, drop a comment and hit subscribe. Now let us get into it. To understand my family, you have to understand the math. There were 4 of us in that house. My mother, Diane, her second husband, Glenn, my older brother, Derek, and me. Diane married Glenn when I was 8. Derek was 11. Glenn brought stability, a steady paycheck from the county clerk's office, a mortgage in both their names, and a talent for never disagreeing with my mother about anything. He was the kind of man who nodded at dinner and said, "Your mother knows best," whenever I asked him a direct question. Derek was the star. Always had been. Captain of the baseball team in high school. Voted most likely to succeed, which in our small Georgia town meant he shook hands well and looked good in a tie. My mother kept his trophies on the mantel in the living room, polished them every Sunday. I was the other one. Quiet. Good grades, but the wrong kind of good. Math and computers instead of sports and social clubs. Diane used to say I was too serious for my own good. At dinner, she would spend 20 minutes telling Glenn about Derek's weekend plans, then look at me and say, "And what about you, Tori? Anything new?" But she never waited for the answer. Not once. I learned young that in my family there were people who mattered and people who were present. Derek mattered. I was present. Glenn never corrected her. He would pour himself more iced tea and change the subject to weather or football. In 24 years, I never once heard him say my name without my mother saying it first. But there was one person in my family who saw me. Really saw me. My grandmother, Ruth Kessler, was 5 feet 2 inches tall and carried herself like she owned the room. She had run a small accounting practice out of her garage for 31 years, filed taxes for half the county. Every April, her kitchen table disappeared under stacks of W-2s and receipt envelopes. Ruth was Diane's mother, but the 2 of them could not have been more different. Where Diane performed for an audience, Ruth worked in silence. Where Diane needed everyone's approval, Ruth needed a sharp pencil and a clean ledger. She started teaching me about money when I was 12, not in big lectures, in small moments. "Tori, money you earn yourself is money nobody can take from you." She said it while balancing a client's books on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because it was raining and the garage smelled like wet paper and coffee. When I turned 16, she gave me her pocket watch. It was small and brass, the kind you clip to a vest chain. The back was engraved with initials I never learned the story behind. I tried to refuse it. "Grandmother, this is too nice for me." She looked at me over the top of her reading glasses. "Nothing is too nice for you, sweetheart. You remember that?" I clipped it to my backpack strap. Carried it through high school, through college. It stopped keeping accurate time somewhere around my sophomore year, but I never replaced the battery. That was not the point. Ruth mentioned once, about 6 months before she died, that she had taken care of things. She patted my hand and said I should not worry about the future. I assumed she meant life advice, grandmother wisdom. I did not know she meant money. Ruth died on a Tuesday in March. Stroke. She was 74. One moment she was organizing receipts in her garage. The next, a neighbor found her on the floor beside her desk, the phone still in her hand. I was 22, finishing my last semester of computer science at Georgia State. I drove 4 hours to the funeral in a car with a cracked windshield and half a tank of gas. The church was full. Ruth had filed taxes for most of the people in those pews. The pastor said she was a woman of precision and principle. He was right about both. Diane sat in the front row and cried louder than anyone. She held Glenn's arm and shook her head slowly, the way people do when they want you to notice their grief. Derek sat beside her, hand on her shoulder. I sat 2 rows back, turning the pocket watch over in my palm. After the service, Diane pulled me aside in the parking lot. "I will handle everything with your grandmother's estate. The paperwork, the accounts. You just focus on finishing school." I nodded. I was grieving. I was exhausted. I trusted her. 3 months later, I graduated with a degree in computer science and a minor in supply chain management. Diane did not come to the ceremony. She said the drive was too long. Derek was busy. Glenn had a work event. I walked across that stage alone, holding my diploma in one hand and Ruth's pocket watch in my pocket. I took a job at a supply chain logistics company in Atlanta 2 weeks later. Entry level. $38,000 a year. I did not know it then. But my mother had already begun spending what was mine. Derek's business lasted 11 months. He opened an online furniture store the year after I graduated. Custom dining tables, reclaimed wood shelving, the kind of thing that looks good on a website but requires actual craftsmanship and inventory management, neither of which Derek had ever demonstrated interest in. Within 6 months, he owed $47,000. Supplier invoices, a warehouse lease he could not break, credit card debt he had hidden from his wife. Diane called Glenn into the kitchen one evening. This I learned later, pieced together from bank records and one honest conversation with Margot. She told Glenn they had to help Derek. "He will lose everything." Glenn asked the obvious question, "With what money?" Diane did not answer right away. She opened a folder on the kitchen counter. Inside was the trust document Ruth had set up 3 years before her death. A simple revocable trust, $40,000, earmarked for me, for education, housing, or a business of my own. Ruth had named Diane as trustee because she trusted her daughter. It was the biggest mistake she ever made. Diane contacted the trust administrator. She filed paperwork claiming a medical emergency for the beneficiary. She signed her name as trustee. $40,000 moved into a checking account, then into Derek's business debts, in less than 72 hours. No one told me. Not Diane, not Glenn, not Derek, who accepted the money the way he accepted everything, as something he was owed. The trust was empty before I ever knew it existed. Ruth's careful planning, her 31 years of filing taxes and saving money, her quiet promise that she had taken care of things, all of it dissolved into Derek's failed furniture website. And I had no idea. 2 years into my job in Atlanta, I started thinking about Ruth's estate. Not because anyone told me to, because I was doing well enough at work to start thinking about buying a small condo, and I remembered Ruth saying she had taken care of things. I called Diane on a Saturday morning. "Mom, did grandmother leave any paperwork for me? A savings account, maybe?" She mentioned once that she had set something up. There was a pause. The kind of pause that lasts 3 seconds but tells you everything. "Your grandmother did not leave anything significant, Tori. She had medical bills. You know how it is." I did know how it was. Ruth had been healthy her entire life until the stroke. She did not have medical bills. She had a garage full of organized filing cabinets and a reputation for paying every invoice within 48 hours. Something did not add up. I spent the next 2 weeks making phone calls I probably should have made years earlier. The county probate office, Ruth's bank. And eventually, an estate attorney named David Phelps who charged $150 for a 30-minute consultation. David found the trust in 20 minutes. $40,000. Beneficiary, Victoria Ingram. Trustee, Diane Ingram Holt. Status, fully dispersed. Dispersed for what? I asked. Medical emergency. That is what the paperwork says. I sat in his office for a long time after he said that. I did not cry. I did not shout. I just sat there, holding Ruth's pocket watch in my lap, doing the math. $40,000. 11 months of Derek's furniture store. A medical emergency that never happened. I called my mother that night. She did not pick up. She picked up the second time I called, 3 days later. I told her I knew about the trust. I told her I had spoken with an attorney. I asked her directly where the money went. Tori, you are making this into something it is not. I flew home that weekend. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Diane used to list Derek's accomplishments while I ate in silence. Glenn was there. Derek was there. Diane had called them both. 3 against 1. I should have expected it. How dare you accuse me of stealing? Diane said, tears already running. After everything I have done for this family, after everything I sacrificed when your grandmother was sick. Grandmother was not sick, I said. She had a stroke. She died the same day. Glenn put his hand on the table. Your mother has done everything for you, Tori. Everything. I looked at Glenn. 24 years, and that was the most conviction I had ever heard in his voice. He was defending the lie, not me. Never me. Derek leaned back in his chair. You always make everything about money. It is exhausting. I looked at my brother, the man who had taken $40,000 that my grandmother set aside for me, spent it on a business he ran into the ground, and never once mentioned it. 3 people, 1 table, 1 unified front. I understood then that I was not going to win this argument. Not here. Not with them. The math was against me. I stood up from the table. I folded my napkin. And I walked out the front door. I did not slam it. I did not say goodbye. I just left. That was the last time I spoke to my mother for 2 years. 3 months after I walked out of that kitchen, an email arrived from Jonas Bremer. Jonas was a German logistics engineer I had met at a supply chain conference in Chicago the year before. We had spent 45 minutes arguing about route optimization algorithms at a hotel bar. He remembered me. We are building something in Berlin, he wrote. Small team. Big problem. I need someone who thinks in systems. Interested? The position was employee number 7 at a startup called Root Forge. The salary was lower than what I made in Atlanta. The equity package was generous, but equity in a 7-person company is just a number on paper until it is not. I said yes in 48 hours. I sold my car. I packed 2 suitcases. I canceled my lease in Atlanta and booked a one-way flight to Berlin for the second week of January. Before I left, I did 3 things. I blocked my mother's phone number. I blocked Derek's phone number. I did not block Glenn's, because Glenn had never called me in his life, and I did not expect him to start. The only family contact I kept was Aunt Margot, Diane's younger sister. Margot was 52, a retired school teacher in Savannah, and the closest thing to a reasonable person in the Ingram orbit. We exchanged emails every few weeks, short, surface level. Work is good. Weather is fine. Nothing that would make it back to Diane. I did not tell my mother I was leaving the country. She had lost the right to know. On the morning I flew out, I sat at the gate at Hartsfield-Jackson, holding my passport in one hand and Ruth's pocket watch in the other. I was 26 years old and I owned nothing but 2 suitcases and a brass watch that did not keep time. It was enough. Here is the part I did not learn until much later. I am telling it now because you need to understand what was happening on the other side of the ocean while I was rebuilding my life. The first time someone asked Diane where I was, it was Aunt Dorothy. Dorothy was Ruth's older sister, 81 years old, sharp as a tax audit, and the kind of woman who asked direct questions. She called Diane 2 weeks after I left. Where is Tori? I called her Atlanta number. It is disconnected. Diane could have said anything. She could have said I moved. She could have said I took a job overseas. She could have told the truth, that her daughter walked out after discovering the trust fund was empty. Instead, she cried. And then she said 5 words that would follow me across an ocean and into 60 mailboxes. She is getting the help she needs. Dorothy paused. What kind of help? Rehabilitation. Diane's voice cracked just right. She has a problem, Dorothy. We found out last year. Glenn and I have been dealing with it privately. Within a week, the entire family knew. Diane told Margot. Glenn confirmed it at a church potluck. Derek posted in the family group chat, "Please keep my sister in your prayers. She is going through a difficult time." The letters started arriving at Diane's house within the month. Cards with floral borders, handwritten notes on lined paper. "Dear Tori, we are thinking of you." "Dear Tori, there is no shame in asking for help." "Dear Tori, your mother is so brave for being honest about this." Diane collected every one of them. She stacked them in a shoebox on the shelf in my old bedroom. 14 letters in total. She never forwarded a single one. Berlin in January felt like arriving on a different planet. The apartment was a third-floor walk-up in Kreuzberg. One room, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a window that faced a courtyard where someone played accordion at odd hours. The heat worked intermittently. The shower took 4 minutes to produce warm water. I loved it immediately. Root Forge operated out of a converted warehouse in Mitte, exposed brick, concrete floors, 7 desks pushed together in a circle. Jonas had written the original routing algorithm on a whiteboard that took up an entire wall. The whiteboard was still there when I arrived. Formulas half erased, coffee rings in the corners. The team was small and serious. 2 other engineers, a product designer, a sales lead, and Jonas. Nobody asked me about my family. Nobody asked me where I came from or why I left. In Berlin, people respected silence. They assumed you had your reasons. On my second day, Jonas walked me through the technical debt in the codebase. It was significant. 3 years of patches stacked on top of a core architecture that had been built for a different product entirely. "We need to rebuild," he said. "I need someone who can think about this like a supply chain. Input, output, flow." I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started mapping dependencies. It felt like the first real work I had done in months. In Berlin, I was not Diane's difficult daughter. I was not Derek's inconvenient sister. I was not the girl whose grandmother's money vanished. I was just Tori, employee number 7, the one who stayed late and asked good questions. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The first 6 months in Berlin were the loneliest of my life. I worked 14 to 18 hours a day, not because anyone asked me to, because the code needed it, and because sitting alone in my apartment with nothing but a brass pocket watch and a single lamp was worse. I ate the same thing most days, doner kebab from the stand on Oranienstrasse, €3.50. The man who ran it started recognizing me by my order. Extra onion, no sauce, sparkling water. I learned German slowly. Enough to buy groceries, read street signs, say thank you, in a way that did not make people wince, not enough to have a real conversation. At night, I sat on the floor of my apartment with my back against the wall and held Ruth's pocket watch. I turned it over in my hands, ran my thumb across the engraved initials on the back. The watch had not kept time in years, but I wound it anyway. The clicking sound was the closest thing I had to company. I thought about Ruth constantly, what she would say if she could see me, whether she would be proud or worried, whether she knew at the end what Diane was going to do with the trust. I did not cry. I had done my crying in Atlanta. In Berlin, I worked. One evening, an email came from Margot. "Everyone misses you. Your mother says you are doing well." I read that sentence 3 times. My mother says you are doing well. What had she told Margot? That I was in rehab? That I was recovering? I almost replied to ask, but I stopped myself. I was not ready to open that door. I closed my laptop and wound the watch again. 8 months in, Rootforge almost died. Our largest client, a German parcel delivery network, pulled their contract after a merger with a competitor. That was 60% of our revenue, gone in one conference call. The board gave Jonas 4 months to show growth or shut down. Jonas called a team meeting in the warehouse at 7 in the morning. He stood in front of the whiteboard, erased everything, and picked up a marker. "We have 2 choices. We find 3 new clients who want what we already built, or we build something nobody else has." I had been thinking about this for weeks. The legacy routing system we had was fine for large fleets, But the real gap in the market was last-mile delivery, the final stretch from warehouse to doorstep. Nobody had cracked it efficiently. The routes were too complex, the variables too unpredictable. Weather, traffic, customer availability, returns. I raised my hand. I have an idea. I spent the next 45 minutes at the whiteboard, drawing an architecture I had been sketching in my notebook for 3 months. A machine learning model trained on real delivery data, layered over a constraint solver that adjusted routes in real time. It was the intersection of everything I had learned in supply chain and everything I had built in Berlin. Jonas stared at the whiteboard. The room was quiet. "How long to build it?" he asked. 4 months, if I get one more engineer. He gave me 2. We started rebuilding that afternoon. 4 months later, we had a working prototype. Within 6 weeks of launch, 3 new clients signed, revenue doubled. The board extended funding for 18 months. Jonas called me into his office on a Friday. He said he wanted to talk about my title. "I want you to be co-founder and CTO," Jonas said. He slid a document across his desk. Equity restructure, 12% ownership, board observer seat. My name on the company registration alongside his. I read every page. Not because I did not trust Jonas, because Ruth had taught me that you read every page. Every time. No exceptions. I signed it in the same warehouse where I had started as employee number 7. The whiteboard behind Jonas still had traces of the original algorithm he had written 3 years earlier underneath my architecture sketches. Old and new, layered together. That evening, I emailed Margot. I kept it brief, the way I always did. "Work is going very well. Got a promotion of sorts? How are you?" Margot replied the next morning. "Oh, Tori, I am so glad. Your mother will be relieved." I stopped scrolling. Read it again. "Your mother will be relieved." "What do you mean, relieved?" I wrote back. 20 minutes passed, then an hour. Then Margot replied, and her message was shorter than usual. "I just mean she worries about you. You know how she is." I did know how she was. That was precisely the problem. Diane did not worry. Diane managed. She managed Glenn, she managed Derek, she managed the Christmas card list, and she managed the version of reality that made her look like the best mother in the room. Something was wrong. I could feel it the way you feel a change in air pressure before a storm. Not visible yet. But there. I closed my email. I went back to work. But I kept thinking about that word. Relieved. As if my mother knew something about my situation that I did not. Before I tell you what Aunt Margot said next, if you have ever been the one person in your family whose story got rewritten without your permission, drop a comment. I want to hear from you. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe. You do not want to miss what happens at that anniversary party. 3 weeks after that email exchange, Margot sent me a package. Not an email. A physical package, forwarded from her Savannah address to my Berlin apartment via international mail. It arrived in a padded manila envelope with too much tape. Inside were 14 letters, cards with pressed flowers on the covers, handwritten notes on lined stationery, a sympathy card with a dove on it, a postcard from Uncle Frank with block handwriting that leaned right, a 2-page letter from Aunt Dorothy on cream-colored paper that smelled faintly of lavender. Every single one was addressed to me. Every single one had been mailed to Diane's house, and every single one contained some version of the same message. Dear Tori, I pray every night for your recovery. Dear Tori, there is no shame in getting help. Dear Tori, your mother is so strong. I do not know how she does it. I sat on the floor of my apartment at 2 a.m, reading them one by one. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. But something inside my chest had gone very quiet, the way a room goes quiet before someone speaks. Margot had included a note. 3 sentences. I found these in your old bedroom when I visited Diane last month. She never sent them to you. Tori, your mom keeps saying she is getting the help she needs. But are you actually in rehab? 14 letters. 14 people who thought I was a drug addict. And not one of them had asked me. I set the letters down on the floor, side by side, like evidence in a case I had not known I was building. I called Margot the next morning. Video call. It was 9 in the morning in Berlin, 3 in the morning in Savannah, and Margot picked up on the second ring because she was already awake, waiting. She saw my face first. Then the office behind me. Monitors, whiteboards, a standing desk with a coffee mug that said Root Forge in blue letters. "Oh my God," she said. "You are at work." "I am at work, Aunt Margot. I have been at work for the past 18 months. In Berlin. At a technology company." Her hand went to her mouth. "You are not in rehab?" "I have never been in rehab. I have never used drugs. Not once in my life." Margot started crying. Not the performative kind, the way Diane cried. The kind where your shoulders shake and you cannot stop it. She told me everything. How Diane had called Dorothy first, then Margot, then Uncle Frank, then the neighbors. How Glenn had confirmed it at a church potluck. How Derek had posted in the family group chat asking everyone to pray. "She said it at every family dinner," Margot whispered. "Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter brunch. Anytime someone asked about you, she would get this look on her face and say, 'She is getting the help she needs.' 2 years. Every holiday, every gathering. The same 5 words, delivered with the same practiced tremor in her voice." I asked Margot one question. "Did anyone try to contact me directly? Did anyone call my phone? Send an email?" Margot was quiet for a long time. "Diane told us not to. She said the treatment center advised no outside contact during recovery." I nodded. Of course she did. My mother had not just lied about me. She had built a wall around the lie so no one could climb over it and find the truth. "Do not tell my mother you talked to me, Margot." "Not yet." The next thing I did was call David Phelps, the estate attorney in Atlanta. I had not spoken to him in 2 years, but he remembered me. He remembered the trust. "I need you to pull the disbursement records again," I said. "Specifically the reason code on the release form." David called back in 48 hours. "Medical emergency. The form says medical emergency for the beneficiary. That is you." "I know it is me. There was no medical emergency." "I am looking at the date," David said. "The disbursement was processed 11 months before your mother began telling people you were in rehabilitation." I did the math in my head. Derek's business failed first. Diane took the trust money to pay his debts, claiming a medical emergency that never happened. Then, months later, when I disappeared and people started asking questions, she invented the rehab story. But here is what made it worse. The rehab lie was not just a cover for my absence, it was retroactive justification for the trust disbursement. If Tori was a drug addict, then of course there was a medical emergency. If Tori needed rehabilitation, then of course the money was spent on treatment. The lie protected the theft. The theft funded the lie. My mother had built a closed loop. One crime explained the other. And as long as nobody talked to me directly, the whole thing held together like a locked box. I sat at my desk in the Root Forge office after that call. The rest of the team had gone home. The warehouse was dark except for my monitor. I stared at the logistics map on my screen. Routes and nodes and flow, all optimized. My mother's phone had not rung yet, but I was starting to see the architecture of what she had built. And I knew how architectures break. I could have done 100 things. I could have called every person on those 14 letters and told them the truth. I could have posted on social media, screenshots, bank records, a timeline of every lie my mother told. I could have flown home and confronted her in front of the whole family. I did none of it. Not because I was afraid. Not because I was weak. Because I had spent 26 years trying to make my mother see me, and I was done performing for someone who had already decided what I was. Instead, I asked David Phelps to send a formal demand letter. Legal letterhead. Certified mail. It stated that the trust disbursement was fraudulent, that no medical emergency had occurred, and that Diane had 45 days to begin repayment of the full $40,000. That was it. No phone calls, no family meetings, no tears at the kitchen table. Just documentation, just process, just the truth, written down and signed. I took the stack of pity letters and put them in a cardboard box under my bed. All of them except one. Dorothy's letter, the 2-page one on cream-colored paper. I folded that one and slipped it into my wallet behind my transit card. I did not know why I kept it. Not then. But some part of me understood that the day would come when I would need it. When a room full of people would need to see the handwriting of an 81-year-old woman who had been told her great-niece was a drug addict by the person she trusted most. Work continued. The demand letter was sent. Diane did not respond. I did not follow up. There was nothing left to say to someone who had already decided not to hear me. 8 months after the demand letter went unanswered, Rootforge closed its Series B round, $47 million. Led by a Berlin-based venture fund with co-investment from a logistics conglomerate in the Netherlands. Our last-mile platform was now operating in 11 cities across Germany, Austria, and the Benelux region. We had gone from 7 employees in a warehouse to 93 across 3 offices. I was 31 years old and my name was on 12% of a company valued at $47 million. The week after the funding announcement, Jonas forwarded me an email. A journalist from Forbes Europe wanted to profile the company. Specifically, the journalist wanted to interview the co-founder who rebuilt the platform from scratch during the near-death pivot. That was me. Jonas looked at me across the office. They want photos, full name, the whole thing. It will be in the print edition and online. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. An article with my full name and photograph would be visible to anyone who searched for me. My mother, my brother, every cousin and aunt who had mailed a sympathy card to a drug addict who did not exist. I looked at Ruth's pocket watch on my desk. I had started keeping it there after the Series A, propped against my monitor like a brass compass pointing somewhere I could not name. Is that a problem? Jonas asked. No, I said. It is not a problem anymore. I agreed to the interview that afternoon. I did not call Margot. I did not warn anyone. I had not planned this as revenge or exposure or vindication. I had simply stopped hiding from a lie I never told. If the truth was going to come out, it would come out on its own terms. Not mine, not Diane's, just the facts. The Forbes interview took place on a Wednesday afternoon in our Berlin headquarters. The journalist's name was Clara Reinhardt. She was thorough, professional, and asked the kind of questions that made you think before answering. The photographer set up in the corner of the office, natural light from the warehouse windows. They asked me to stand near the whiteboard, the original one, still covered in Jonas's handwriting and my architecture diagrams layered on top. Clara asked about my background. I gave her the version that was true and complete without being dramatic. I grew up in Georgia, studied computer science, worked in supply chain logistics in Atlanta, moved to Berlin to build something. She asked what drove me. I said efficiency, the ability to reduce waste in a system, to make something run cleaner and faster than it did before. She wrote that down. She asked if my family was supportive. I paused for exactly 1 second. My grandmother was. She passed away a few years ago. She taught me everything I know about how money works. The photographer asked me to look toward the window. Click, click, click. I wondered briefly what those photos would look like on a page, whether they would look like someone who had spent 2 years being described as a drug addict by her own mother. The interview lasted 90 minutes. Clara shook my hand at the end and said the piece would run in the next issue of Forbes Europe in the 30 under 35 section. Print and digital. My full name, my photo, the company's story. The journalist asked what drove me. I said efficiency. The truth was something I could not explain in a magazine. The article went live on a Tuesday morning, 8:45 Central European Time. I know the exact time because I was sitting at my desk with a cup of coffee when my LinkedIn notifications started coming in. First 1, then 5, then 40. By lunch, I had over 300 connection requests and a dozen emails from people I had never met congratulating me on the feature. The print edition hit newsstands 2 days later. My photograph was on the section cover, standing by the whiteboard, arms at my sides, looking toward the window. The headline read, The quiet engineer who rebuilt a dying startup into a last-mile giant. I read the article once. Clara had done a careful job. She focused on the technology, the pivot, the growth numbers. She mentioned my background briefly. Small-town Georgia, computer science degree, supply chain experience in Atlanta. She quoted Jonas saying I was the most disciplined problem solver I have ever worked with. My family was not mentioned. Why would they be? I checked my personal email around noon. Nothing from Diane, nothing from Glenn, nothing from Derek. I had not expected anything. They did not follow Forbes Europe. But at 1:17 in the afternoon, I got a text from Margot. Tori, I just saw. Oh my God. I stared at the screen. Margot did not read Forbes. Someone had shared it with her, which meant someone in the family had seen it, which meant the clock had started. 5 minutes later, Margot sent a second message. Just one line. Your mother's anniversary party is this Saturday. I put my phone face down on my desk. I looked at Ruth's pocket watch propped against my monitor. The second hand was frozen, the way it had been for years. But somewhere in Georgia, something had started moving. Diane and Glenn's 25th wedding anniversary party was scheduled for Saturday. The Forbes article published Tuesday. That left 4 days for the internet to do what the internet does. Margot called me that evening. It is all over LinkedIn. Becca shared it. Frank shared it. Someone from Glenn's office shared it. Have they connected the dots? I asked. Not yet. But Tori. The party. 60 people. All the same people who think you are in rehab. Your mother has been telling them for 2 years. I sat with that for a moment. 60 guests. Anniversary party. Champagne, string lights, a banner in the yard. And somewhere between the appetizers and the toasts, someone was going to pull out their phone and say, Wait, is this Tori? Were you invited? Margot asked. No. Of course not. You are supposed to be in treatment. She paused. Are you going to come? I had not thought about it. Genuinely had not. I had no plan to fly to Georgia, no scheme to walk into that party and expose anything. The Forbes article was about my work. It was not a weapon. It was not designed to embarrass anyone. But Margot said something that changed my thinking. Tori, you do not need an invitation. You need an entrance. I was quiet for a long time. I am not going to make a scene, Margot. You will not have to. The article already did it for you. I booked a flight that night, Berlin to Atlanta, red-eye, arriving Friday morning. I did not tell Jonas where I was going. I did not tell anyone. I just pulled out my suitcase and started packing. 1 blazer, 1 blouse, Ruth's pocket watch, and Dorothy's letter, still folded in my wallet. The hotel was 6 miles from the house I grew up in. A Holiday Inn near the interstate with thin curtains and a parking lot that smelled like hot asphalt. I checked in Friday morning, slept until noon, and spent the afternoon doing exactly nothing. I ironed my blouse in the hotel room. White cotton, no pattern. I laid out the gray blazer I had bought in Berlin for board meetings. Black trousers. Simple flats. I clipped Ruth's pocket watch to my wrist with the leather strap I had bought in Kreuzberg. It looked more like a bracelet than a watch now, but anyone who knew Ruth would recognize it. I did not bring binders of evidence. I did not bring printouts of the trust fund disbursement. I did not bring a lawyer or a speech or a list of grievances. I was not going to prove anything to anyone. I was not going to stand in front of 60 people and recite what my mother had done. I was just going to show up. That was all. The truth was already published. It had a headline, a photograph, and a circulation of 400,000 readers. I did not need to say a word. That evening, I drove past the house. Slowly, like a stranger passing through. The banner was already up. Happy 25 years, Diane and Glenn, in silver letters across the front porch. Folding chairs stacked in the driveway, a catering van in the side yard. I kept driving. Back to the hotel. I ordered room service, a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water. I ate sitting on the edge of the bed. Then I called Jonas. Wish me luck. He laughed. You do not need luck, Tori. You have data. I smiled. It was the first time in 2 years. Saturday morning felt like standing at the edge of something. Not a cliff. Something quieter. Like the moment before you open a door you have not opened in years and you are not sure what the room looks like anymore. I woke at 6. Showered. Dressed. Stood in front of the hotel mirror and looked at myself for a long time. Short hair. I had cut it in Berlin. A sharp chin-length bob that Ruth would have approved of. Clear eyes. Steady hands. I did not look like someone who had been in rehab. I did not look like someone who needed pity letters. I looked like someone who had been building something in a warehouse on the other side of the world, which was exactly what I was. The party was set for 6 in the evening. That gave me 12 hours of waiting. I spent them poorly. Walking around the hotel room, rereading Clara Reinhardt's article on my phone, checking my email for messages from Diane that were never going to come. At 4, I drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks from the house. Sat in the parking lot with the engine off. Watched neighbors walk past with covered dishes and gift bags. Saw Uncle Frank's red pickup truck pull into the driveway. Saw Derek arrive with his wife in a silver sedan. I watched from behind my sunglasses and felt nothing dramatic. No racing heart, no sweaty palms. Just a flat, clear awareness that I was about to walk into a room full of people who thought I was someone I had never been. At 5:45, I started the car. Drove the 3 blocks. Parked on the street, 2 houses down. I took a breath. Checked the pocket watch on my wrist. Touched Dorothy's letter in my wallet. Then I got out of the car. The backyard looked exactly the way I remembered it, except decorated. White tablecloths on long folding tables. String lights crisscrossing from the porch to the oak tree. A playlist of soft classic rock playing from a speaker on the railing. A buffet table along the fence with aluminum trays and a 3-tier cake that said 25 years of love. 60 people. Maybe more. I recognized most of them from the side gate where I was standing, still out of sight. Uncle Frank in his usual flannel shirt holding a beer. Aunt Dorothy in a blue cardigan, sitting in a lawn chair with a plate of deviled eggs on her knee. Cousin Becca, 24, scrolling through her phone. Diane stood near the cake table. Navy dress, hair freshly done. She was holding a glass of white wine and laughing at something Glenn said. Glenn wore a vest and a tie, which I had never seen him do before. He looked uncomfortable. Derek stood beside them, arm around his wife, looking like a campaign photo. A neighbor leaned toward Diane. "How is Tori doing? Any progress?" Diane's face shifted into the expression I imagined she had practiced many times. Soft eyes, slight frown, brave smile. "She is still getting treatment. We try not to upset her. The doctors say she is making progress, but these things take time." The neighbor nodded sympathetically. "You are such a strong mother, Diane." Margot sat at the far end of a table near the gate, picking at a roll. She was not looking at Diane. She was looking at the gate, because she knew I was coming, and she was the only one. It started with Becca. Becca was Derek's wife's younger cousin, 24, a marketing coordinator in Savannah, the kind of person who was on LinkedIn the way most people were on Instagram. She was scrolling through her feed at the dessert table when she stopped mid-scroll. She tilted her phone, zoomed in on a photo. Then she looked up, looked around the party, and looked back at her screen. "Wait," she said to the woman next to her. Is this Tori?" The woman leaned over. "What?" "Tori Ingram, Forbes. It says co-founder of a logistics company in Berlin." Becca held up her phone. The Forbes article. My photo. My name. Printed right there under the headline. The woman took the phone. Read for 10 seconds. Then looked at Diane, who was still chatting near the cake, unaware. Within 3 minutes, 5 more phones were out. Uncle Frank was squinting at his screen, holding it at arm's length. Dorothy had asked the person next to her to read the article out loud. 2 of Glenn's colleagues from the county clerk's office were Google searching my name. The whispers started at the edges and moved inward, like water filling a room from the baseboards up. "Forbes? Berlin? She is a co-founder? $47 million valuation? Wait, I thought she was in rehab?" That last sentence. I could almost hear it from where I stood behind the gate. The 6 words that meant Diane's 2-year lie had just met reality. Diane had not noticed yet. She was refilling her wine glass. But Frank was looking at her now, and his expression had changed from casual to something harder. Something that looked like arithmetic. And then the side gate opened. I did not rush. I did not pause for effect. I just walked through the side gate the way you walk into any room. 1 foot, then the other, steady and even. White blouse, gray blazer, black trousers. Ruth's pocket watch on my left wrist, the brass catching the late afternoon light. 60 people turned to look at me. Some recognized me immediately. Some took a moment. A few had no idea who I was. Glenn's work friends, neighbors who had moved in after I left. But the people who knew me, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins who had signed those letters, they stared. Uncle Frank set down his beer. Dorothy's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Becca held up her phone again, looking between the Forbes photo and the woman standing in the yard. The music kept playing. That detail stayed with me. Bruce Springsteen on the speaker, singing about glory days while 60 people tried to figure out why the drug addict looked like she had just walked off a magazine cover. Diane saw me last. She had been facing away, talking to the neighbor about the cake. She turned because the yard had gone quiet, and when she saw me, the wine glass in her hand trembled. Not fell. Trembled. Tori? I walked toward her. Not fast. Not slow. I stopped at a comfortable distance, close enough to speak. Far enough that she could not reach for my arm. Hi, Mom. Happy anniversary. 60 people stared at me. Not one of them expected to see a drug addict in a blazer. Diane opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. She looked at Glenn. Glenn looked at the ground. I stood still and waited. I had gotten very good at waiting. Uncle Frank was the first to approach. He walked across the lawn with the slow deliberation of a man choosing his words carefully. Tori, he said, you look wonderful. There was confusion in his voice. He was looking at me the way you look at someone who should be somewhere else. Somewhere. Institutional. Thank you, Uncle Frank. I have been well. You have been... He stopped. Becca appeared beside him, phone out. Is this you? She turned the screen toward me. Forbes Europe. My photograph. The headline about Root Forge and the Last Mile platform. It says you are a co-founder of a tech company in Berlin. I looked at the screen as if I were seeing it for the first time. Yes, that is me. The crowd shifted. People moved closer. 3 more phones appeared. Someone read aloud, Tori Ingram, 31, co-founded Root Forge after joining as employee number 7. A woman from Glenn's office looked up from her phone. Wait, this is her? The one who was in... She stopped herself, but everyone heard what she almost said. Diane's phone buzzed in her handbag on the table. Then it buzzed again. A colleague of Glenn's had just texted her the article link. A neighbor had forwarded it from LinkedIn. Her phone was beginning the 3-day marathon it would not finish. Diane looked at Glenn. Her face had gone pale in a way that makeup could not cover. Glenn's jaw was tight. He was holding his vest button like a man bracing for impact. Derek stepped forward. What is going on? He had not checked his phone yet. He did not know. Check LinkedIn, Becca said. She did not look at Derek when she said it. She was still looking at me. Dorothy stood up from her lawn chair. She did it slowly, the way 81-year-old women do, but there was nothing frail about the look on her face. Diane? She said. Her voice carried across the yard. The music had stopped. Someone had turned off the speaker. Diane, you told us she was in rehab. The yard went silent. Not awkward silent. Courthouse silent. Diane started shaking her head. Dorothy, I was trying to protect... You told us she is getting the help she needs. Dorothy's voice did not waver. For 2 years, Diane, every holiday, every phone call, she is getting the help she needs. Those were your exact words. I reached into my wallet. My fingers found the letter. Cream-colored paper, folded into thirds. Dorothy's handwriting. I opened it and held it so Dorothy could see. Dear Tori, I read. One line. Just one. I pray every night for your recovery. Dorothy looked at the letter. Then she looked at Diane. Then she looked back at me. I have never been in rehab, Aunt Dorothy. My voice was steady, quiet, the same volume I used in board meetings. I have never used drugs, not once. I was in Berlin, building a company. Nobody spoke. The string lights swayed in the breeze. Diane's phone buzzed again from her handbag. And again. Diane's eyes filled with tears. You do not understand. I was trying to protect this family. You just left, Tori. You left and everyone was asking questions and I did not know what to say. You could have said I moved. That sentence landed like a stone in still water. Simple. Factual. Devastating. Because she could have. She could have said I took a job. She could have said I went overseas. She could have said the truth. But the truth did not make Diane look like a brave, sacrificing mother. The truth made Diane look like a woman whose daughter had walked away. And Diane could not bear that. So she chose rehab. She chose to make me a cautionary tale instead of a person who had left. Diane turned to Glenn. Her face was crumbling the way a structure crumbles, not all at once, but in stages, one support beam at a time. Say something, Glenn. Glenn stood there with his hands at his sides. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the ground and kept looking at it. 25 years of nodding and pouring iced tea, and this was the moment it finally ran out. He said nothing. Derek stepped forward. Tori, this is Mom and Dad's party. You are ruining it. Uncle Frank turned on him so fast that Becca took a step back. She is ruining it? Your mother lied to all of us for 2 years, Derek. It is not that simple. Then when is it simple? When was it the time to tell us the truth? Derek had no answer. His wife touched his arm and he shook it off. Diane's phone buzzed again. Then 3 times in a row. Neighbors, friends from church, Glenn's co-workers. People who were not at the party but who had seen the Forbes article online. People who had heard the rehab story and were now doing the same math everyone in the yard was doing. Diane grabbed her handbag from the table. The phone was still buzzing inside it. She pressed it against her stomach as if she could muffle it. Then she turned and walked toward the house, fast, heels clicking on the patio stones. Glenn followed her. The screen door closed behind them. The yard stayed quiet for a long time. 60 people standing around a cake that said, 25 years of love. Holding plates of food nobody was eating. Diane's phone kept ringing from inside the house. We could all hear it through the kitchen window. It did not stop. I did not follow my mother inside. I had not come here to chase her. I had not come here to win an argument or force a confession. I had come here to exist in a space she had erased me from. That was enough. I turned to Margot first. She was standing by the gate, crying quietly, clutching a napkin. I hugged her. She held on for a long time. Then I walked to Dorothy. I put my hand on her shoulder. Thank you for your letter, Aunt Dorothy. It meant more than you know. Dorothy took my hand and squeezed it. She did not say anything. She did not need to. I looked at Derek across the yard. He was standing alone near the buffet table, arms crossed, jaw tight. I met his eyes. I did not say a word. Neither did he. Then I walked out through the side gate, the same way I came in. In the car, I sat for 2 minutes with the engine off. My hands were on the steering wheel. My breathing was even. I thought about something Diane had said to me 5 years ago at the kitchen table, the day I found out about the trust fund. That money was never meant for someone like you. She was right about one thing. I was never meant for a family like hers. I started the car, pulled away from the curb, drove back to the hotel with the windows down and the Georgia evening air on my face. I did not look in the rearview mirror. Not once. If you have made it this far, you already know this is not just a story about revenge. It is about the moment you stop asking permission to exist. If that hit you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment. I read every single one. Margot called me Monday morning. She gave me the report the way you give a weather update. Matter-of-fact, measured, and relentless. My mother's phone rang for 3 straight days. She did not pick up once. The family group chat erupted Saturday night, within an hour of my leaving. Becca posted the Forbes link. Frank posted a question. Did anyone know about this? Silence from Derek. Silence from Glenn. Silence from Diane. By Sunday morning, Dorothy had called 4 family members directly. She was never in rehab. Diane made it up. The information spread the way information does in families, quickly, unevenly, and with growing fury. Derek deleted his 2-year-old group chat post asking everyone to pray for me. He did it quietly, at 6 in the morning, as if nobody would notice. Becca noticed. She screenshotted it before it disappeared. Glenn sent me an email on Monday. 2 sentences. I am sorry. I should have said something. He did not explain what he should have said, or when, or to whom. But it was the first time Glenn had ever communicated with me directly without Diane in the room, and that was something. Diane did not contact me. Not Monday, not Tuesday, not the rest of that week. Her silence was louder than anything she had ever said. I flew back to Berlin on Wednesday, sat in my seat at 35,000 feet, looking at the clouds. My mother's phone was still ringing somewhere below me. I closed my eyes and slept the whole way home. 6 months passed. Rootforge opened a second office in Amsterdam. We hired 40 new engineers. The last mile platform expanded to France and Portugal. I spent most of my time in meetings, which was less satisfying than coding but more necessary. Diane sent me a letter. Not an email. A handwritten letter. 4 pages long, on the same kind of lined stationery her friends had used to write me sympathy cards. She apologized. She explained. She justified. She said she panicked when I left. She said the rehab story started as a white lie that grew. She said she never meant for it to go this far. And then, on page 3, she wrote, I was just trying to protect this family. I read that sentence twice. Protect this family. The same family that spent $40,000 of my inheritance on Derek's failed business. The same family that told 60 people I was a drug addict. The same family that never once picked up the phone and asked me directly. I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope. I did not write back. Margot visited Berlin that summer. We walked along the Spree and ate ice cream near Museum Island. She told me Dorothy had stopped speaking to Diane, that Frank sent Diane a letter of his own. Short and not kind. That Derek's wife had started asking questions about the trust fund. The trust money was being repaid. Slowly, $5,000 every quarter. My attorney managed it. I did not follow the payments. I had built something worth more than $40,000. I had built a life she could not touch. I am 32 now. I live in Berlin. I run a company that moves packages across 11 countries, which is a strange thing for a girl from small-town Georgia who used to eat dinner in silence while her mother counted her brother's trophies. Some nights, I sit on my balcony and hold Ruth's pocket watch. The brass has gone warm and dull with age. The second hand still does not move, but I wind it anyway, because the clicking sound reminds me of a Tuesday afternoon in a garage that smelled like wet paper and coffee, and a woman who told me that nothing was too nice for me. If the people who raised you need you to be broken in order for their story to make sense, the kindest thing you can do, for yourself, is to walk out of that story and write your own. That is my story. 2 years of silence, 14 pity letters, and 1 magazine cover that said everything I never had to. If this reminded you that your truth does not need anyone's permission, share this video, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.